out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello, Tim.
Disrupting cable.
Welcome to episode 44 of Dismembering Horror.
How annoying is that for the listener?
Well, hopefully they just watched this romp of a film we watched and did the exact same thing we did and made Swamp Thing noises throughout it. Swamp Thing friend.
I like how he becomes sort of like a caveman. It's like, what's the connection?
Well, I think that's you mean we in translated through us he becomes a caveman because
Yes.
he doesn't in the movie. Got it. Yeah. And welcome everyone, as I just said. I mean, as Swamp Thing just said. Let me repeat it in case you missed it. Welcome to episode 24 of Dismembering Horror. And what is that, Swamp Thing? The podcast show where we okay, I'll get this one. Okay.
Truck.
No, okay, I got this. It's the sorry. We should just have rehearsed it. It's not your fault. Okay, this is the podcast show, horror movie show, where we dismember horror. We're going to talk about Tim Aslin and I are going to talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything interesting or noteworthy in these horror films we're watching.
Yeah.
And we're watching ones that are they're ones that we're like, oh yeah, I want to see that. I haven't seen that for a while. All while just sort of like wanting to see if we can find something that's really scary or interesting or what's out there.
Yeah, that's to me. That's it. That's the goal.
Let's fill our holes of knowledge.
Oh, right, those holes.
Well,
Get that scare on.
Kind of excited to talk about this. Actually, I didn't think I was after we watched it, but we've had a large gap, and now I've grown to be excited. There's one thing from last episode I wanted to not talk about, but just say for the record, because this is the time in the show where we do that. If there's anything to revisit from previous episodes,
I think you would call this housekeeping.
Yeah. Housekeeping is, when we were talking about Arnold, if you were with us for that episode or watched that film, Tim, you were explaining as like, you're kind of, who could I recommend this to? And you're saying like, yeah, well, if you like Laughing and the Monkeys and shit like that, then you should, check this out.
Yes.
Just want to say I like, if not love, the Monkeys, and I did not like Arnold.
Fair enough.
That's it.
I'm not going to argue with you.
No, there's nothing. No,
No, it is like the Monkeys.
I'm just evidence.
I would have to agree. The Monkeys is a better piece of art,
of pop. Yeah, exactly.
pop art than Arnold.
Great. So we can't agree on that.
God, I loved me some Monkeys when I was like 10.
You should check out the movie Head as an adult. It's their movie made with the Jack Nicholson production company from the late 60s, where that made like Easy Rider and Five Easy Pieces and stuff. And it's the Monkeys kind of in a very, very out there experimental psychedelic way, kind of playing with their self-awareness of their image and that they're a manufactured image and are we a real band, all that stuff.
So it's like very meta.
Yes, exactly.
That sounds cool.
Not a horror film, but should we get into talking about this week's horror film? Do you have anything else?
Yes.
All right, well, we watched...
I mean, no, I don't have anything else. Yes, we should get into it.
Yes, we should watch it. Well, then we're going to start off playing a little bit of this trailer for 1982's Swamp Thing.
Government agents, scientists, soldiers, master criminals, secret formulas, monsters and midgets. None of them belong in this swamp. Only one thing does. The Swamp Thing.
Here comes trouble.
The Swamp Thing.
There goes the neighborhood.
I forgot Swamp Thing was here. I'm glad he perked in.
He just left.
Yeah, he left during the trailer.
He's like, I've seen this.
He gets pretty embarrassed seeing himself on screen.
Especially in that outfit.
Yeah, so this was... right. He takes off the Swamp Thing outfit. It's like this really like photorealistic Swamp Thing.
Yeah. Who is it? Oh, hey, Swamp Thing.
That's not my best costume!
Jesus.
How many years later? Like
He's still upset about it.
yeah.
God. Give me a break.
Yeah, we aren't quite ready for our first guest on this show, but
keep him out.
We wanted him in the room if he wanted to be here. Yeah, well, this was like I think we were just interested. I'm pretty sure I added this to the list and was just like, oh yeah, Wes Craven movie. I think I've seen this movie. I'd be curious to see what it is.
I agree. That's sort of what my interest was. Is like, I didn't expect it. Knowing, I don't know. Do you read comic books at all?
No, I read like stuff that wasn't originally comic books, like Ren and Stimpy and Ninja Turtles, like
that was cool.
the cartoon version
right.
as a kid.
Yeah, well, those the original Ninja Turtle comic graphic novel I had as a kid, it's really dark.
I had the first issue.
It is. I mean, it's like the original is in black and white, and it is not for kids.
Yeah,
and it was a kind of an attempted spin-off by the writers. They placed the Ninja Turtles in that first book in the Daredevil universe, and there's like a couple nods in it to say
is that like mean it's darker DC tone?
It's it's Marvel. Daredevil is Marvel, but I think I don't know what happened with who owned Ninja Turtles ultimately, but originally these guys just were like, we're gonna write this comic. It's gonna exist in the Daredevil universe.
Okay,
so Daredevil universe is quite dark.
Well, we're talking about a different green creature today.
So, point being, what was my point?
I don't know. That's why I'm saying.
Comic books. I asked you about comic books. So, like, I grew up reading comic books quite a lot. I did not read DC, which is what Swamp Thing is under. But I knew of him, just sort of, you just kind of know he exists and whatever. And, like, I was excited to see this movie because it's like, it's a horror, what we would consider a horror director taking on a comic book.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Swamp Thing is known to be kind of this, I think there's a term that they use that I can never remember, but it's kind of a gothic horror noir type style.
Well, yeah, and I'm interested to hear your comic book fan perspective throughout this.
So I wanted to get into it from that point of view. And to see what Wes Craven at that time was going to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. well, interesting.
And he did something with it.
Well, then how would you rate it after we do a summary of it?
Should we do a summary?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do a summary of the movie. Here we go. Alec Holland. Wait, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Alec Holland is a scientist studying plants in the swamp. Cable something or other.
Alice Cable.
Alice, okay. Alice Cable is a new FBI agent. She's us. She's the audience. And she shows up. She takes the place of a guy who's like, fuck this swamp. I'm out of here. And through
who gets killed. He's the guy that gets killed at the beginning, right?
No, he's not. He's the guy who jumps on the helicopter and is like, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Okay.
Right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So Alec and Alice are in the swamp, and then unnamed guerrilla warfare guys show up and basically blow his lab up. And in doing so, his newest discovery is, I guess, sort of it's tossed on him, and he blows up and he falls in the swamp, and that chemical reaction causes him to turn into Swamp Thing.
And then the summary
end.
is there's bad guys trying to get Swamp Thing.
They want the serum. So he made a serum that potentially makes everything more enhanced and grow, super fast and 10 times
right.
bigger.
And
so they want to weaponize it.
There's
the
rich bad guy, Anton Arcane, and his minions, henchmen, who want to. Why do they have it out for the woman Alice? Well, they're like just trying to. They're like, get her, let's kill her, get her.
I think the only conceit you can make on that is that they know that Swamp Thing protected her that one time.
Okay,
so they're like, if we get her, we get him.
Right.
I think that's the angle.
And then the summary of the movie is they are trying to get Swamp Thing slash her
slash the serum,
and Swamp Thing saves her every time, and she gets scared and runs away until she stops doing that.
She progressively shows more boobs.
Yeah, which she apparently, and there's an international cut that showed.
I heard some guy talking about it down the street. No, I read it.
Hey, I just watched that film.
No, he wasn't even talking to me. He was just talking. He's talking to a plant, and he was like, "Hey, remember in Swamp Thing?"
Well, we're just one step removed from that. This could just be one of us doing this podcast.
That's true. What if it was just one of us? Like, what if this whole time it was just one guy in a room?
Like, yeah, one of us doing the voice,
and he's just really good at overlapping his own.
So is that
two character
Tim
dialogue.
Who's really good at it, Ryan who's really good at doing it, or are they both characters?
I think they're both characters.
Right. Anyways,
let's make that movie.
Okay, great summary. If you didn't watch it already, how would we rate it?
Oh God, I just it doesn't do anything for me at all. Like I wanted to see a different version of this. Like even like 5 minutes in, I was like, no, I don't want this one. I want a different one. I want a newer one that's cooler and higher production value and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So being a brat, basically. Yeah. So for me, telling myself, I would tell myself to avoid this. Unfortunately. God,
that's fine.
It's like the fourth avoid I've ever said.
I was thinking, like, actually, it's interesting because we're recording this a little more removed, about like 6 days removed, 5 days removed than when we normally do it, just like the next couple days. And I think it's grown on me more in that, like, what I've liked about it has risen to the top, rather than just being
to the top of the bog.
The mire, the swamp.
So you're the scum. You're like the bog scum on the top of the bog there.
Right. But, there's beauty in the swamp, Tim, if you know where to look for it.
I love green stuff.
But so I was thinking, I was getting more excited about it and thinking, it actually want me to rent it. But then I remembered, no, like, stream it to me. It's not, oh yeah, whatever. You can just stream it. I'm like, no, it's still your time.
Yeah.
Like, stream it shouldn't just be, it's like, yeah,
It's not a throwaway.
Yeah, exactly. So I give it a stream it, as in, like, it was a curiosity that satisfied a curiosity, and then some, and then some was just enough some.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
And, like, you'll hear when I talk about what worked for me, there's, a good amount.
Wow.
Choice
Cool.
moments.
Yeah.
That, as I said, things rose to the top now that we've had some time to let it simmer.
Oh, man. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like it when we disagree.
Yeah. All right. Well, then should we get into what worked?
Yeah.
What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
What worked?
What worked?
What worked?
What worked, Tim?
I don't know. What worked?
Do you want me to tell you what I thought worked?
Okay. No. I'm going to tell you what worked for me.
Great.
If you're looking at it just from a sort of entertainment standpoint, the campiness deliberate campiness worked for me. Like the Rambo guy and the Bruno guy. Basically the henchman. The henchman worked for me. As much as I hate, like, they're so dumb and cheesy, I can kind of get on board with how, like, appreciating that that's just what it is. It's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually funny.
And how
like,
fun was
Bruno
it to,
at
like,
one point is
yeah.
just wandering around with his pants tucked up to his nipples, and he's got a hat on that's got like 3 branches on it, like he's camouflage. I mean, that shit's funny.
Yeah, the 2 main henchmen were this pudgy guy Bruno and this like Rambo-esque, like Rambo permed.
You
guy.
can call him Rambo ass.
Well, I had that too. I mean, the henchmen, I wrote, Rambo perm guy and Bruno, like,
Yeah.
they were fun. And, you know, and what was fun too was keeping track of them, watching it with you. It was like, oh, this guy, oh, did he die? Oh, it's him. Oh, he popped up, and seeing where, you know, what fates they had. And the guy, the Rambo guy, he was just like incessant, you know, and going after him.
Yeah, I mean, at what point? So I think this is an interesting debate to have, because it almost depends just on like your mood at the moment. How willing are you to get into camp, cheesy, just stupid, you know, like, or not, like at any given time, like I might really be like, I'm mad at
So
that.
this is where
But sometimes not.
This is where we differ, because I'm extremely willing to go there.
Yeah, it really depends for me.
Like at a certain point toward the beginning, sort of after that like clunky setup, it sunk in how goofy, campy, corny it all was, and knew that it was. It felt like.
I agree. I think it knew.
And then I was able to really revel in that.
For example, the screen wipes.
Yes.
Like they knew. I mean, I know what they're doing. They're sort of saying this is a comic book movie, so we gotta liven up the scene transitions with some dumb wipes. So
Yeah.
you're like, you know, after an explosion, the wipe is like a fucking in the shape of a cartoon explosion, and it like you know blacks out the screen. So shit like that is funny.
I loved
but
it.
it's so dumb.
I don't like whatever. I don't know, like dumb, like, I don't think of dumb as a bad thing, you know? Like, I love it. Like, it was comic booky to me. I liked seeing something that felt like it was a comic book movie.
Sure.
You know, and sort of not being familiar with them. It's just sort of having that sort of like, know the generalities of maybe the more classic comic books, what you think of it. Like, the comic book transitions that you mentioned, the bad guys we already mentioned, the henchmen, the setting of like the rich person with the house and the swamp,
God, yeah.
and then like, and you know, certain moments, of course, and then like the green lighting and the colored lighting. And when I just said some moments, some of the kind of like James Bondy moment. I don't know
Sure.
how else, you know.
I would call them more A-team moments.
Yeah. But in this setting, it felt like it in the 80s aesthetic, of course.
Absolutely.
But all that for me was like, yeah, this is I dug all that. This is a comic book movie on display.
Yeah. Well,
And it delivered for me on, like, when I was like, well, what's a Swamp Thing movie? I'm like, there's like Swamp Thing going around in the swamp. There's like the woman. They're like guns. They're trying to kill each other. And there's like, you know, like, like there's a lab that blew up. Like, this is, I can't think of what else I would want as far as content, as far as situation and story, you know, it like fully delivered on a Swamp Thing movie.
Yeah. I mean,
in
I get
that story sense, like for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that they did what you kind of would expect them to do with the source material.
Yeah.
Right? That comic had been around for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the initial run of it had already ended, so there's a couple years in between the end of the run and this movie being made.
Oh, so it was like, here is the canon of Swamp Thing from which we can adapt.
I mean, it was fairly young at the time, right? So and had ended, like they weren't making more Swamp Thing comics at the time. And so whoever got the rights to it were like, let's do a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which coincidentally made the comic, you know, DC then re-upped and wrote a bunch more Swamp Thing stuff because of the movie.
Yeah.
So
Right. Get him back in the...
And to be honest, the stuff that came after the movie, comic book wise, is pretty. There's some pretty sweet stuff.
I'd imagine,
So,
because it's
yeah.
like, then they have to say, well, what else can we do with it? They have a new perspective on it all.
And they handed it over to people who are like world renowned as like the fucking best comic book writers.
Yeah.
In
Well-
particular, Alan Moore, who's
Oh, really?
yeah, Alan Moore was in the second volume of this comic book. Like he was the writer on it.
I'd be curious to read that.
Yeah, I've heard, in my sort of listening to other stuff, and I've heard recommendations to specifically read his run of Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not a Swamp Thing fan, that's like a worthwhile thing to
He
get
elevates
into.
it.
Yeah. Which you would expect. He's,
Yeah.
he's Alan Moore.
I
Anyway.
have a few more general
Let
things.
me guess. I want to guess one of your non-general things.
Okay.
It's got to be Ray Wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's fucking great.
Right?
So Ray Wise is the actor who plays Alec Holland.
Yeah.
Pre-turning into Swamp Thing, then they cast another actor to be in the suit and all that.
Yeah. So Ray Wise, like, I know him from Twin Peaks fame, and this was like a young Ray Wise, and it was just like, he's hardly in it, actually. But
What do you think screen time he's got? Do you think it's
7 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's under 10 minutes.
Yeah. But it's like, what an impact he has. And it was like, even though he's not in it literally at all, it was like him being the jumping off point helped with the character and everything.
Yeah, I see that.
Mm-hmm. And just, yeah, you're right. I loved him. That was that's
The
one of my specific things. Like, and whatever I wrote, actually, what I wrote about it was, I said, whatever Ray Wise we had, I gladly took,
It's fair. Oh man.
Okay, well now
Do you have other stuff? I'm trying to think of.
Well, now
I don't.
Can I say, like, yeah, my more general things than the specific things?
Yes.
Trying to sort of hone in on like the what came before of what was informing this movie. I thought it was cool how it was like felt like I could see sort of the old monster comics in it, as well as the old monster movies in it.
I totally
where
agree.
it was like, it felt like the sort of, Wolfman, Frankenstein, all that stuff of like the sympathetic transformation protagonist. But then that, as I said, like the B movie, that's a certain kind of B movie. And then the other B movie, but yet comic book of those comic book things of like the swamp, the guns, the machismo, all that.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Is a interesting mesh of both those. And it was cool to see Wes Craven kind of like wrestle all that.
Yeah, I think he was doing what he could to keep those balls in the air.
Yeah.
Like he's obviously well versed in the cinematic horror history realm.
Well, or I think it was
so-
more that he just, I mean, I'm sure he's versed in it, but I think it's more that he's just like who he is as a guy is just able to take an intellectual approach to it all and does his opinionating and enough research and whatever,
Yeah. What else?
Well, that was cool. Yeah. And then I liked this. I can't think of any specific moments, but the, if you call it the romance between
Cable.
Swamp Thing and Dr. Cable, Alice Cable, it was surprisingly, I thought, never too much.
That's because we didn't get the international version.
Right. No, but like you always thought, I don't know, like the whole movie was so hokey or whatever. And like I was kept waiting for something that I thought maybe actually would have felt too much of, not necessarily anything kind of like physical, uncomfortable, something between them, but just this kind of like a bad hokiness, or it's even something that would have been a little too hokey even for me in this context.
Yeah.
But it never went there. It was just like there was a romance between them when they were humans, and then just this kind of like more like can never be actually together, so that's the realm we're keeping it in.
Yeah.
And
well,
still there's a respect and admiration there.
Right. I think that's a big part of it. And I think that the go too far version of that probably is in the sequel with Heather Locklear.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't remember if I said this on our last episode when we pulled Swamp Thing, but I was like, oh yeah, I think Heather Locklear is in it. It may have been when we weren't recording. I was wrong. She's in the sequel,
Yeah.
Return of Swamp Thing.
Which I think is maybe the one that I saw.
I think that's the one I saw too, and just thought that was the
I
one.
feel like that has like a bigger mansion showdown ending or something, because that's
Probably.
what I kind of remember.
Because that's what kind of set they could afford.
Yeah, Ford Moore. Okay, so specific things I kind of
Yeah.
loved.
Okay.
I'll go as far to say
I know.
not
I
just
know
worked.
a couple of these.
The
I have a
first
couple
one, the first one to start in chronological order was when Ray Wise catches fire and takes 28 seconds to run and stumble outside into the swamp, and we see him like do the whole thing, and it plays in real time. It's like one of those moments that like, well, there's a dude actually on fire, first
Right.
of all. And usually, I don't know, you see that kind of resolve itself pretty quickly, or be kind of a beat, oh, I'm on fire, get put out.
Right.
Or like you're running in circles and helpless
Right.
to do anything, or like, put me out, put me out. This was like a just sort of, it was something like really horrific about it, actually, with like someone who knows where they need to go, gotta get to the water, the swamp, but it's like, kind of just far enough
yeah.
where it's like I gotta run on fire this long to get there. I hadn't quite seen it breathed new life into the person getting set on fire in a film for me in a way I really loved.
I like that the flames were kind of tinted green in post.
I didn't notice that.
That's cool, man.
He like explodes explodes on him, and
Yep.
then he's just like just like runs out.
Oh yeah.
So I love that.
That's good.
I liked the formula. I really liked the sort of the essence of what that represented, the functionality of it, and the power that it had. Of like, that was a really interesting idea I hadn't quite seen before. It brings out more of whatever you are. Now, which was, we kind of were like, well, that's kind of plot holes. There's kind of a lot of ways to interpret that.
Yeah.
But I could see where they were
That's cool.
going. And it was at a comic book level where it's like you kind of just give them the benefit of the doubt because it's a comic book world like that.
I could swear I have seen something that is that same concept,
Yeah.
and I can't think of where
exactly.
it's from. So
Maybe
but it's a good idea, right? Because because it's just open enough for kind of interpretation.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of different directions you can go, right? If it's so, I think when the bad guy, when we were like, oh shit, he's gonna take it, and he's thinking he's a genius, and I'm thinking, yeah, but he's also a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, well, which is he gonna turn into,
Yeah.
right? Like, what's it gonna be? I think the Incredible Hulk actually does this. In certain incarnations
It's
of it,
the
they've
inner
done it.
strength coming out too.
Yeah.
Physical strength.
It's your, yes, exactly. There's sort of what is your essence, the quality of your essence,
Yes.
right? And that's a really cool concept.
Exactly.
Because assholes often think that they're awesome, and they're wrong, and then they get what's coming to them.
Yeah.
In this certain construct, which I think is it's fun. It's
Yeah.
like, it's cathartic when you go, haha, you fucking dumbass, you got what you got
Right.
coming to you.
It keyed me into kind of like what I imagine is one of the appeals of comic books, and this being a comic book movie, is you kind of have this be aesthetic and world, but yet you have these deeper ideas from that, sci-fi whatever situation.
Totally.
Which
There's a lot of morality stuff in this realm, which is cool.
Yeah. I like that. It's not just turning one into a monster or bringing out the monster in you.
Yeah.
It can do that. But
And I think when Arcane, I think that's how you say is Arcane, the bad guy, when he actually ends up drinking it, and I'm like, he's gonna turn into a piece of shit. I was like saying that in a joking way, and then he like actually kind of does turn into a big pile of shit for a little bit, and then he morphs into the Wolfman, and it's like, whoa, what the fuck? And I remember you going, look, he is a piece of shit.
Yeah. It did happen. When it started, the main actor Adrian Barbeau,
Sure.
it's kind of met to her like just when she was showing up, is this kind of like, I don't know if I quite get her star appeal or her actor appeal here. But as soon as she picked up a gun and was just in go mode, it was like, oh, she's like a fun action star. And they didn't give her anything to sort of let us on to that until it came on, and it came on hard and fast.
Yeah, and she's clearly like athletic and what's the word?
Shot a gun before.
I mean, she's adept at like physicality, like really clearly, like comfortable in her body, like can move.
Right.
I initially thought to myself, oh, this makes sense. I think she was one of the Charlie's Angels, but she wasn't.
No.
So, you know, wherever she had come from, whether it was some sort of athletic background or not, she's got that in her, and it shows on screen. And it's really appealing, actually.
Yeah, it was just like, though, when her character was being set up before that happened, there was nothing. It was like her character switched when she picked up the gun.
There is some, well, never mind. We'll get to it. I was gonna trash something.
I already said I liked, I had fun keeping track of the bad guys and the bad guys. Okay, one of the first standout scenes for me was, I think, like the centerpiece action scene where that made me perk up and be like, oh, this is the movie here happening. It was the boat scene.
Oh God.
What? Oh God.
Okay.
What? Oh God.
Go on.
Okay, that's where it really kicked in for Tim and I having fun with a Swamp Thing in the room, where it was like there were all these shots of Swamp Thing, these choice shots of Swamp Thing kind of like getting shot and like falling off a boat, where we'd just be like, "Rah!" We just doesn't actually make those noises, but he just so is that, and then, or like where he like where they turn and he's just standing there all of a sudden, all those, and then it had like it kind of like went on.
It went on way too long.
No, but
it went on forever.
But it went on in such a way where it was like, oh, they actually are going for it and did it.
Yeah.
I liked that about it. It wasn't just like, I don't know. I was for the low budget they were clearly working on, I was pretty impressed with just sort of the amount they put in it. And one of my other favorite moments in it was there was the part where the boat flipped over with the two bad guys in it, and it was cut to slow-mo, and it was just one of those classic, like, where the shot is slow-mo, but their scream is, like, regular speed, but they just, like, dubbed it in layers, so it's, like, the length of the, oh, cry,
Yeah.
Like, any one
funny.
of those.
Those
great.
are good.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't have this down, but just thinking about the little boy in it now, like what?
Wait a minute. Oh, right.
The glasses, the gas station worker guy.
Yeah,
He was such like an oddball little guy. I kind of I got to give him that.
I had to look this up too because I was like, I don't feel like this is an original. This is a character from the comic book.
No,
like I don't feel like it. He's not.
Yeah,
they made it for the movie so that Cable had somebody to talk to because Swamp Thing ain't saying shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of a like, you get information.
Yeah.
But
well, I thought
it was an odd choice.
I just thought his casting just brought a little more, like, filled in the universe of this world. Filled in the world of this world, I should say.
That's actually a good point because there were a couple times before he kind of got introduced where I was like, where is this swamp? You know what I mean? And then he gives it some grounding in like a real world thing. It's oh, okay, he's a kid who works at this dilapidated gas station. It's definitely we're in the States. Mm-hmm. We're in the South. Like it's super remote because like his parents aren't around, so he's just hanging.
Yeah.
So it's like it gives you a broader sense of the world that we're in, which is good.
I agree with you. That's great. When I said that, that is why I said universe of the world and not world of the world, because I didn't even mean real world context. You're totally right. And what I just meant was it's just another color for the palette of this movie, kind of filled in what could have felt like we're kind of just it's a slog or we're trapped or we don't have sort of context. It was just, more non-setting context for like tone, what is this movie, all that.
Yeah.
Fun.
Well, and I think this is a really big risk when you're making low budget stuff. Not to say that this was actually low budget, but be that as it may.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched a lot of stuff that was shot for very little, right? Either it's friends stuff or whatever. And there is a commonality in something that hurts the movie very often, and it's a limitation, so you have to find a way around this limitation. But if you do not find a way to kind of establish world and place somehow, it really hurts the movie. Because you don't get that moment of sort of grounding where you go, okay, I know where you are.
Yeah.
So just a brief example is like, if you cut to a scene in a bar and you immediately start with the conversation of the two characters that are in your movie talking, you don't know where you are. You know you're in a bar, right? Because they're at a table. But you don't know the context of the bar, the greater context of the bar in relation to how those characters feel about where they are. And so you see this in TV a lot. You just have that initial opening establishment shot, which points at, if you're doing it right, the context of how the main character is feeling, so that you don't have to have exposition talking about how they're feeling. So for example, if you're in a bar, if you're a fish out of water and you're in this bar for the first time and it's a biker bar and you're from the city, you open that shot with the biker bar and the rowdiness of that, and then you push in onto the conversation. So you immediately go, oh, look at this person who's totally out of place. We now know how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do that and you just start inside the conversation, it undercuts the audience's ability to get on board with where they're at.
So you're talking about like how when Pee-wee goes to the biker bar in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, how we start out outside with him and hear the ruckus inside.
Yes, that's exactly
versus
right.
Not jumping in.
Yeah.
With him.
It's a tiny thing, and it's a budget thing, right? Like a lot of time you're running and gunning with
I
a
see
low
it's
budget.
more a
But you can
screenwriting
get it in
question
there.
of like
It
when
can
we're
be.
told to be, when you sort of are always asking how efficient, what's the latest in the scene we can start.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good example of when not to start.
Right.
At a certain.
You can start in the middle of the conversation, but
Well, here
get out, get an establishment of where we are.
I think this is an example somehow of maybe what you're talking about, but how, films are aware of that, then play on that a bit. I think this is maybe what you're talking about, but the opening of Shaun of the Dead is a classic, I think, play on that, where I haven't seen it for a while, but I remember the intro is Shaun talking to his girlfriend, and they're having like the serious kind of, are we breaking up conversation or whatever. Yeah. And then it keeps revealing that their friends are there at the same time. So it's like we start in, it's sort of the opposite. It's what you're saying, by denying the context and making it seem like it's just the two of them first. And, play that for comedy and it's not so much revealing what they're going through, but who they are.
That's right. Yeah. Who they are in this moment.
Yeah.
And so
their friends are still along, but
finding creative ways to give the audience that is important. And, that's your job, obviously, as a filmmaker to find those. If you don't think about those and you just ignore, looking for those devices, it's going to show in the product. It's going to feel lower budget. And and just as not even in terms of the budget, as a viewer, you're going to feel disconnected from it. Right? If this whole thing had Swamp Thing, back to Swamp Thing, if we had never seen that gas station and we had only been in the swamp and in the mansion, it could be fucking anywhere. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We'd never get this sort of broader sense of a world at any point, and we would get tired of it. And
yeah, so it was fun in this, to tie it back, it was fun in this movie when when all the other rich people showed up at the party, because then it sort of was like, oh, it filled in about the character. Okay, these people flew in or whatever.
Yeah.
Here they are. I don't know. Yeah, it was more more world building, so we aren't just stuck in this house in the swamp and that's it.
And take a movie that does have you basically just stuck in a house the whole time, like Black Cat.
Yeah.
We did things to lead up to that, to establish why they're there, who it belongs to, what the dangers potentially are, you know, and then it goes even further as to set up this story aspect of saying that that place that we're going to spend the rest of this movie in was built on a totally different place, that there's this underlying story stuff that we're given to broaden the world and to make it make sense when we do go into a different setting.
So knowing that, you can also, by knowing that, you can deny having that in order to an effect. Like, let's say if you were trying to make the Black Cat from the perspective of the daughter who's been trapped there the whole time. Like, and that would be, I am trapped here, and this is all of a sudden the outsiders are coming in.
Yeah.
You know, different kind of horror.
Yeah, different movie for sure. But yeah, anyway, that's sort of a weird tangent. But I think that the conclusion is adding those things can be a very beneficial tool.
Yeah. And this was a very comic booky, classic in a good way, comic booky way to do it, or maybe more movie way to do it, of just having this new character coming in the first day on their job, stuff goes wrong.
Yeah.
Pretty wrong. Yep. What a bad day, first day.
I love how he, throughout the rest of the movie, he just, I mean, we're assuming that this is taking place over many miles of swamp, and every once in a while he just pops up.
It's like 2 acres maybe.
Yeah, he just fucking shows up. He's like jumps out from behind a tree and he's like, "Hey, Cable, you okay?" And it's like, holy shit, where'd you come from?
I am always watching.
I don't even remember if he actually, he talked in this, because he had some pretty great
Well, I
lines.
mean the little kid.
Oh, the kid. Yeah.
He'd just show up. I forget his name. Gale or something like that. That's wrong, but whatever it was.
Okay, 2 more kind of moments to address here that stood out to me. Oh my God, Tim, this was one of my favorite scenes I'd seen.
I know where you're going.
When Bruno is given the serum, the formula. So we have one of our favorite henchmen. Oh my God, I hope you guys watch this, because this scene was so great. It's on YouTube on movie clips. It's called like Bruno takes the thing, or Bruno transformation scene or something.
I just called Bruno Fat Bruce Willis.
Yeah, basically.
He looks like Fat Bruce Willis.
But yeah, okay, so there's so much going on. It was great, because you had it like, you have the horrible supervillain who's like using his henchmen's lives indiscriminately to
also just every once in a while standing with his shirt off for no reason.
Yeah, and who's doing this freely in front of like investors or the public, apparently, as if whoever. Like this is going to impress them, giving this person who you'd think I'd have some sort of relationship with a fate worse than death, arguably. Yeah, you know. But it was like, so the context, I loved all that, you know, that he's giving it to him without his knowledge. We knew it was going to happen when it happened. Then on top of the context, how it played out was like, it was indelible. You couldn't direct it. I'm sure it was like, you know, Wes Craven was probably like, I don't know what you freak out, whatever. Like, you know, what are you going to do with it? But it was just kind of one of those performances where it's like, you think you have the actor figured out, and it's kind of just operating at this pretty bland, like, or like whatever level. But then you just have them go to this really oddball place, like, you know, in a more like a Harmony Korine movie or something, where you're just like, whoa, what was that? Was very human, you know, because it was so unique. But his freak out when he takes the potion, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, it was like, you know, he really,
and it goes on.
Yeah,
they just left the camera. They're like, just go, just keep going.
So what I'm saying is, he went for it and did it. It wasn't any like whatever prior conception for how to perform that there may have been. He didn't do that. He just made it honest, you know. It was incredible.
Well, and then the brilliance of this cut. Mm-hmm. It's not even a cut. That's what I love about it.
What cut? Or
when
what
he falls out of frame?
Yeah.
They don't cut away.
And then when he's revealed?
And then his smaller self pops up. That is So hilarious.
Yes. Well, then the next thing I loved about that, this is just so many angles I loved about this, clearly, but the actual makeup and design, he like shrunk to size and became this kind of like grotesque, I say fate worse than death, like pig like man.
Yeah, he's got this weird nose and like pointy ears.
Yeah, it was
and,
like the
his
sausage
head is...
man.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just like, ugh, like how like it was just kind of horrible, but in the best of ways, because it was like, well, I was not expecting this.
And this is really the first moment that we are given that idea of what the serum or the formula does to you, like what it actually does to you.
Right. Oh, and it was so great because like Bruno, you know, we cut to like he saves the day like 2 scenes later or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like you can imagine this whole other movie going on where it's like this side henchman character who's like, you know, third dimensional or you know, one dimensional, went through this whole character journey of like, what does it mean to what does it mean to be a henchman? And this, I've been a horrible person this whole time. And then all of a sudden he's like coming in saving them, like, quick, over here. You know?
Yeah. I've always wanted to write a henchman movie, like the second or third in command guy.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't even a henchman.
Do you remember
but
those deleted scenes from Austin Powers?
Yes. Yes. That's right in that sort of lane. But I love that idea of like a whole movie that centers around how that guy feels.
Yeah.
And like he goes home and he's like, God, what a fucking day.
Call it the henchman.
Yeah. I feel like this exists.
Henchman. But Bruno the henchman, man, yeah, he what a character. No one else really did, but he certainly went on the character journey in this film.
Yep.
No one else did. And then that leads us into the big ending.
Oh boy.
Which was 2 men in rubber suits fighting each other. No, just kind of like doing what they can in this tepid water.
Yeah. I really was scared for them as actors.
Yeah, like if they fell and the water filled in quickly.
Yeah.
Which they did. Like
undoubtedly. This is, I mean, I'm fairly claustrophobic. The idea of being in a very restrictive rubber suit and then falling into water. Mm-hmm. Oh, fuck. That's the scariest thing in this entire movie.
It kind of is.
Like
hearing it now, it's kind of the reminder of, you know, you're an actor and acted, but this is why we have stunt men and women.
Yeah,
stunt people,
and insurance.
Yeah, and doing things carefully and safely and giving it the time. But it was like, okay, yeah, for these things that give me that, like, give us that gut, like, oh God, you know, that sounds horrible. That's the job of these people to just go, okay, well, no, that's my job. You know, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
But more context for this fight, Tim.
Yes.
It all clicks. So this is the main bad guy has now transformed into his inner
wolf.
Self. No, so Tim, this is what you said. There was like when we were just watching it happen, you it was the feeling like you had your fingers on your chin and we're just looking at it, kind of aghast, and you just stated, "There's a pig wolf with a sword." Like you're like, what is that kind of like? What is life anymore?
Yeah, I had an existential crisis right in that moment.
and that's what it was. Just like everything I loved, you know, okay. I'm sorry. This is on my mind. We were jamming out in Elton John before this. I saw Elton John last night. It was incredible. And my friend I saw him with, I was telling him, like, we were talking about his outfits and what they do. Like, it was showing, like, old footage of him when he was really going ridiculous, where he's wearing, like, an Amadeus, you know, powdered wig. Where he's dressed as, like, Donald Duck. You know, just all this stuff. And I'm like, this is the stuff that goes inside the Grateful Dead logo. This is the heady stuff. Stuff that's presented to you where it refuses the ability to reason, you know?
Yes.
And I'm all about that. I love stuff like that.
Sure.
And that all clicked for me when you were just, your reaction to that, like, don't even bother throwing logic at this, was there's a pig wolf with a sword. That's our starting point, and that is also our end point.
That is my last thing that worked for me. It actually is the sword, like the fact that there's a sword.
Well, yeah.
Just that's how we end up. We end up with Swamp Thing taking the sword. Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
takes the sword and fucking impales Pig Wolf with it. That
So it
in a
was-
swamp, that is
It was that the pig wolf guy in his
Hilarious.
human form, like, had some sort of, like, was a sword antiques collector or
Yes,
something.
He
or
lives in,
fetishized that
some
stuff.
sort of mansion-y thing with like a dungeon. So great.
And that was the end, and I loved that about it, and clearly I loved a lot in this film.
Cable. Yep.
Well, that's what I got. Do you want to
That's
move
it.
on?
That's all I got.
Great.
Let's go.
All right. What did not work for us?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
God.
Don't let Swamp Thing hear.
All
As far
right.
as he's concerned,
won't.
we only loved everything.
I
about
mean,
this
it's
movie.
kind of all just the basic, like, era, budget, design for me.
Yeah, it's like this movie could have had everything I still loved about it and had the $5 million more in it, you know.
Yeah.
And it
You know how
made a
much
big
this
difference.
costs?
No.
2.5 in 82. Well, 81 technically, if that's when they
That
made
is
it.
a relatively very
That's-
low budget.
Yeah, but back then, that's decent.
Yeah.
For then,
But like,
and they put it into God knows.
think of all the
fucking
explosions.
what.
Like,
I guess.
think of
yeah.
all the people, the extras in it.
You know what they
between-
put it into? That fucking helicopter.
How about the Swamp Thing costume?
Certainly not what they put it into. Although I bet that costume was really difficult to fucking make.
I bet you it was expensive.
Yeah.
It was probably a lot of people working on it.
Yeah.
It was
It
kind of
looked like shit.
yeah.
It looked
No,
you know what it
literally.
looked like? Yes. It looked to me like they took a wetsuit
Mm-hmm.
that was 2 sizes too big for the guy who they're putting it on, and they didn't even spray paint it. They just took paint and poured it on it, and then added some foam, shit that they stitched into it.
Yeah.
Minimal.
But like hard foam. It was more rubber.
Yeah,
It was kind
like-
of like he was so stiff all around. It was just
Yeah.
like when you saw him take steps on or take steps on stairs.
Sure,
You could
yeah.
just see those rubber
Yeah.
folds
Yeah,
just like
exactly.
so clearly.
Especially around his sort of midsection. Like if he bent over in any way, it was like, yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And this is not to diminish or disparage the people who worked on that, because I bet it was a fucking really hard thing to make.
Yeah.
Especially then.
See, that's why
But-
I can, I agree with this to an extent, but it didn't detract for me because I just so admire anyone who still makes the thing on the budget
Yeah.
despite the budget.
Well, and I would really love to see other designs
Mm-hmm.
at the time. Like personally, if I was the person having final say on the look, I would have covered him in more like just actual moss. Just
Yeah.
cover him in moss and fucking like weird viney looking shit.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and so you got this effect of this like suit. It's just a suit.
But like knowing it took another 35 years to get to the Shape of Water level,
sure.
like it made sense in context too. Like it wasn't just
Yeah.
a budget thing.
Yeah.
Like, or if it was a budget thing, like this would have need to be like really like super innovative,
Yeah,
in technology, like a sort of next level budget.
Here's what I'll say. The alien costume, like the alien
In Alien, yeah.
in Alien, existed
Mm-hmm.
8 years earlier.
Yeah. Never seen in this full outdoor light.
Right. No, that's true.
And you
And
can
that's a
actually-
hard limitation, but still.
Did you mention this on the show? I know you mentioned it to me, but how the alien looked wrong until they covered it with slime.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it on the show, but yeah. Yeah,
Um,
in camera.
I like Swamp
They-
Thing could have been slimy.
He had what? Please, more slime, everybody.
There was like
It's
no
the
slime.
best.
It was kind of just like
Except in Iramentari.
oh right.
Remember that was my big complaint.
That's
in that?
when you mentioned
That's
it.
right. Yeah, it's like
But-
I wanted more glistening, slimy
Right.
shit in that.
Swamp Thing looked kind of grossly dry.
Yeah.
The rubber just looked like bleh, costume.
Yeah, that bummed me out because I bet I actually am gonna look at the other versions that have come since.
See what 6
I know
years
the
later did, 7 years later.
TV, then I think it was the TV one in like the early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
it's good and bad for its own reasons too. So, you know, I think he's, this character is actually a hard design to pin down because it looks amazing. Like if you draw him comic book style, you can do all sorts of cool shit.
Yeah,
But trying to get that to translate into real,
That's what I'm saying. We need
That's
like
hard.
modern technology
Yeah.
to do that.
well, they're going to, so,
Of course.
yeah. Of course.
So this was what didn't work for you. I was fine. I mean, I obviously am talking about it. I acknowledge it, but it didn't not work for me. It didn't not work for
Yeah,
me.
no, I get you. Do you have more? I have more.
Oh yeah, the like I said, everything that I loved about the hokiness and the comic bookiness in that way, but the one thing that did make me just go like, and maybe this wasn't actually that stuff, but the dialogue
It's rough.
it was there was like a perfect example that I meant to remember at the time, but I can't. But it was sort of like when they try to work in a certain quippiness to it, or a sort of like, this is just a little. This is obviously not how people talk, and I kept thinking, well, maybe this is the exact kind of like, I imagine this in the little speech bubbles, like,
Yeah. That's a trap.
But whatever this was not working for me.
I think we finally have gotten to a place in the evolution of comic book movies where directors have let go of the idea of it's a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Which is what I enjoyed about this, is that it did have that closer tie to.
Right, but I
books,
think
yeah.
that it has gone through a weird evolution of it not working.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ang Lee's Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. I mean, that movie was a hair's breadth away from actually having thought bubbles.
The best
on
probably
screen.
like comic book film in recent times. Some people, I feel like it's either love it or hate it, but Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
that does a brilliant job of it.
Yeah, I thought filmmaking wise, pretty stellar.
Yeah.
The Michael Keaton Batman's an interesting kind of pinpoint
Yeah.
example on that trajectory.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I could do
yeah.
a whole episode on comic book movies.
Well, what else did you have that did not work for you?
The 1982 misogyny is pretty gnarly.
You mean just what do you mean?
Objectification, body objectification of the lead, the sexual, like this, just there is no reason to have a scene where Dr. Holland is being skeevy and lecherous, and then it ends with him just kissing her aggressively and her going, I don't want, okay, it's fine. I hate that.
I thought she kicked
fought
him
back.
in the nuts and then.
No, no, when they finally discover that the formula is
Oh,
working,
Doctor. Yeah. At the beginning. Yeah.
that I'm just like, that trope of the woman just sort of, she's initially against the love interest, like the aggressive love interest, like come-ons or whatever they are. She initially like feigns, don't do that bullshit with me, and then and then he basically just grabs her by the neck and force kisses her, and then she's okay with it. That concept makes me so fucking annoyed and uncomfortable. It's like, I hope we've moved away from that to a large degree. But it like when you go back to the 80s, the 70s and the 80s have so much of that. It's so hard for me to swallow because it just, in a broader scope, is representative of the shittiness of the world at that time. And then you start going, have we moved on? And the answer is sort of, sometimes, but also not sometimes. And then I'm like on a weird slippery slope of being mad at the
You're
world.
saying like the trope, the by default, the woman is into the guy from the get-go.
Yeah, and
trope.
all it takes is him forcing himself on her for her to go, oh,
Oh, I thought she was into him from the get-go. I thought they were like flirting.
Well,
and
there
she
was
was
that
like,
whole-
either way, it was not consensual.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, I read it as like she was pretty into him, and
I read it. There's a little bit of that
because wasn't
there's
she like, you
misdirect of
are
his-
single? That's
right.
your sister.
That's right. The misdirect of his sister. She thought his sister was his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was like, why the fuck are you flirting with me? You have a wife, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's all fucking hard about it, like, you know? And then when she finds out, she's like, oh, you fooled me. You know, I just think it diminishes the intelligence of any female character when you have them jumping through those hoops that end with her getting force kissed and like falling for the guy. It's gross to me. It's fucking gross. So do better. I think lots of people are doing better.
Is this,
but 1982, woof.
Was that kind of a predominant thing in comic books of the time, you think, too? That sort of
yeah. Well, God,
writing
that's
women
interesting.
to be that kind.
That's hard for me to remember, but I'd have to go pull that era's comic books to see. But my kind of recollection, yes, yes, to a degree. I mean, I'm trying to think of the stuff I read. I read a lot of Spider-Man, a lot of X-Men.
It's funny because I could see that scene being handled in a way where it could work in a modern context way where I think you could do the same thing. I could be shooting myself in the foot here. I'm not an authority on this, but like it could feel like it was in his character to just sort of be like, I just discovered the thing I've been working on for 10 years and like I kissed this person in front of me, and had her given, and then her response could have been played realistically where like, I want to slap him, but then I don't, you know?
So here's actually what I'm saying. This is the broader point.
Mm-hmm.
There is no reason for him to kiss her.
Mm-hmm.
Why does romantic sexual intimacy have any place in that moment? It doesn't. But patriarchally, if that's
well,
a
no,
word,
I'm saying like it's the classic. I'm so happy I could kiss you.
But
like
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. There's this classic sense of when men succeed, they get the girl.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck that.
I
That's
didn't
not
see
how
it as him.
So I'm going to give you
a
a totally different modern context for this of a film that does it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Mad Max Fury Road could have had Max and Furiosa have some sort of romantic thing. And in historically speaking, they should have, based on the tropes of screenwriting of the past 100 years. And George Miller just erased that or never even broached it in that film because it's unnecessary. That's not what women should be. They shouldn't be representative of a thing to win in story.
Yeah.
They can exist in the sphere of romance. That's fine because that's a thing that exists in life. Mm-hmm. But when you write a story, a modern story at this point, I think it is stupidly presumptuous that women's role in the story is to romantically appease your male lead. Like, why?
Yeah.
Fuck that.
I guess I could see it like where it's not romantic, nor was she, put as the reward,
I think just by virtue of him placing himself on her in that way.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah, totally.
And I think, now we need to move away from that stuff as a trope because, as we well know, women are fucking like they're fed up with being treated that way, and rightly so. Like they didn't. She didn't ask him to kiss her.
Would it? What would it have done if in Fury? I mean, I'm just saying this because it's interesting. I'm just like
no. I
picking
think
it
it's
apart.
worth having the devil's advocate
in Fury Road. Like I'm glad they didn't do this, but let's say in Fury Road, it ended where it's like Furiosa is stoked and like Max is right there, and she on her own sort of like does the, you know what, I want to fucking kiss this guy. All of a sudden, looking at him right now, I think he's kind of cute and sexy or whatever. I'm going to lay a kiss on him. It's almost it's sexual, but it's almost like, I just want to fucking do it, and I'm going to do
Right.
it, and we're in this world, and I just saved the day, so I'm going to kiss this guy, and I don't want anything more than that except to do this right now.
I think that it would have felt incredibly out of character.
Yeah, no, totally. That's
Right?
why I say it wouldn't have
And
worked.
so
but I'm
that's
just
actually
saying
that's actually a good way to
I mentioned
see
it more
why
as a
it,
dynamic shift, you know?
right. But that's a good example because that, in a way, to me, that kind of proves my point. When you look at it in the Fury Road context, and you say, well, why doesn't she kiss him? We go, oh, because it doesn't make sense. That's why it's shitty that for the last 100 years, it's been the other way around, that we just accept that men can do that to the female counterpart. They shouldn't. There's no reason why it would be in Alec Holland's character to do that.
Yeah.
Right? But because that broader context of historically what we've seen over and over and over again, men doing that, we just accept it. We don't question it. But when you reverse it, like in Fury Road, you go, oh, that feels weird. Yeah, no shit, it feels weird
Yeah.
because it shouldn't fucking be there.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, rant over.
It was this film. It fell into a kind of repetitive back and forth for me. It's fine if they had done that while just giving it a little more like there was some other kind of increasing, decreasing stakes or something change going on. So I thought it was repetitive. I'm trying to coin a term here, and it's story plotting, because
Yeah.
people say plot when they mean story. Plotting means how is the story plotted out? What it means, what are the sequencing of events to tell the story? I know you know this. I'm just saying it. And then the story is the story, what happens in it, not how it happens. But I think they're confused a lot because, and used interchangeably for a reason, because there is kind of there is almost an in-between of those two that we don't have something to refer to. You know what I mean?
Yes. It's
like
we're
when they're working together, when I'm not just talking about story, I'm not just talking about plotting, but it is something, what I am saying refers to both, So the repetitiveness came from the story plotting.
Well, I mean, I think you can even magnify that specifically in that, like, even just in a technical way, where it's like something happens, big confrontation, separation, shot of Swamp Thing by himself. Mm-hmm. And then that just kind of rinses and repeats.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, and then you get basically the same long shot of Swamp Thing. Maybe it's not exactly the same thing you just saw, but it's definitely it's from the same take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just 10 seconds later in the reel. And they just keep kind of doing
Right.
that, and you kind of go, okay.
And I only say
Right?
this as it was merely a little too repetitive, because the film was like 80 something minutes, and it had luckily that boat scene as a centerpiece, that it was never that the repetitiveness was never too egregious for me. But it was like enough where it was like, this could have been improved, give it a little more something going on.
I think this movie, who wrote it? Wes Craven wrote it, right?
Yeah, because it I remember thinking like, oh, this is him working, getting his dialogue bearings as well.
Yeah. So to me, this movie really feels like a television 44-minute episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like an episode of, I think A-Team was 22 minutes, but it feels like a two-parter of A-Team.
Yeah.
So it would be 44 minutes of actual content. And
That's kind of what I said about, to a lesser extent, Blacksmith and the Devil.
oh yeah, that's true.
Elementary.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, they did a bunch of padding out that to make it a 91-minute movie,
Yeah.
and it really it budgetarily, I mean, surprisingly, had a good amount of money behind it, but setting wise, film sort of technique wise, story wise, everything felt to me like a TV movie. Not even TV movie, but like a hour-long episode of TV. So, take that for what it's worth, I guess. This could have been an episode of $1 Million Man or Incredible Hulk. You know what I mean? It could have just been a side episode of those to me. And it felt...
Well, it's funny because you're saying
same.
this and then it became a TV show.
I know, that's true.
So the pilot.
Oh man, I just looked at a picture of his costume. Oh boy.
We were talking about like how this movie was juggling different things like like what I was saying, how I liked it was the old monster comic book as well as the old monster film, and there's other stuff in it, there's like it's a combination of things, and it was cool that I could see this sort of balancing act and combining act going on with all that, yet it never like totally found its groove. It never totally coalesced.
No,
Which
I completely agree.
I'll hand it to him for, juggling those balls as much as he did, but
yeah,
could have had that groove a bit more.
Yeah, it's lacking sort of a broader, cohesive, like...
Yeah,
it's what is its thing,
right?
What defines it as its own movie?
And it's like
it doesn't feel like it has that.
Yeah, it's like we could point to all these things, and we can point to all these things, but we shouldn't be able to as easily. I don't know.
Yeah, like, did it feel to you like a Wes Craven movie?
No, I think this is a standout.
To me, that's a big thing.
Yeah. I want to talk more about that in things of note.
Yeah, me too.
That's actually all I had for my what did not work for me.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me too. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? I mean, no.
All right, things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
So, there's some pretty, having said all of what we've said, there's some pretty interesting stuff around this.
Yeah.
One of the things I read was the fact that Wes Craven, this was like an opportunity for him to show that he could do action. And he took it on specifically obviously more than one reason, but like this was one of the big reasons he did it, because he's like, I need to prove to the studios that I can do big action sequences.
It's like the equivalent of Tim Burton doing Batman after Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Sure, yeah. So that's pretty fucking cool and interesting, and
yeah,
take it for what it's worth.
Well, to stay on, the Wes Craven, we had just mentioned it, ending our last segment. It was really interesting how this was, as I said, a uniquely apart from the rest of his filmography, and kind of what it feels like. Like, there's some elements in it we can say he touches on later, thematic things, whatever. But it's really, it being a comic book movie, I guess, is it's pretty different. But what I thought was interesting is like twofold. You can kind of observe him getting his bearings. Like, this is sort of when his Wes Cravenness kind of like, I liked his, Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, whatever. Mm-hmm. But this was the one, Nightmare on Elm Street is when it was like Wes Craven, you know, he figured it out, so to speak, right. But it was interesting to see this film in the context of his experience trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, it is. God,
Writing wise, which would make me go a little, in some parts with dialogue, but
just for context.
yeah. But directing wise, it was cool to see him.
His first
figuring it all
movie,
out.
which was 10 years earlier, which is, wait, I don't know if that's his first film. Last House on the Left.
Yeah,
Is that his
and then
first one? So that
Well, no,
movie-
actually, I read he's
probably did
he
shit
under
before
a
that.
pseudonym made porn films.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. But just for context, the budget on Last House on the Left was $87,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And then
the budget for Hills Have Eyes, which is, I think, quite a big step up, was, I mean, it's listed as somewhere
like $500,000.
somewhere between 350,000 and 700,000,
Yeah.
so probably $500,000.
And then he did a TV film, I believe, and then this.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I just think it's interesting. He got a lot of money comparatively to do this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in doing what we're saying, like in trying to reach to prove that he could do these like set pieces and action and all of that, maybe that took away from his real skills as a filmmaker were, and those got kind of, I think, lost in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's trying to accomplish this other
Well,
thing.
it's cool because you kind of I was reading stuff through and I forget exactly what it was, but something about he got the idea for Nightmare on Elm Street while doing this film.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Sorry, I forget exactly what it was, but what I was gonna say I think was interesting is how Nightmare on Elm Street did come right after this film, and less so just the idea leading to it. It's neat to think that's a sort of movie that didn't. I'm sure he was aware it didn't totally click, and maybe he wasn't, realized he didn't have his heart set in making action films,
Yeah.
So it's neat to sort of see him maybe taking a step back after this, like David Lynch after Dune, and being like, okay, what am I doing?
Right.
What's you learn a lot about how to follow your intuition when sort of making a film that maybe where you drop those few balls when when juggling them.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause that's all filmmaking is.
That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Do you have more to say about him or filmmaking specifically? Because I kind of want to just talk about Swamp Thing.
Maybe this is a good transition into what you're talking about. If you want to talk, I'd already said this, so see if you can use this as a transition. But where I said like this is a true comic book movie, I just thought it was interesting. It helped me put in that context of thinking like Marvel movies aren't comic book movies; they're Marvel movies. This is a comic book movie.
That's right. Yeah. And I think if you go back and wanted to read that first volume run of Swamp Thing, it would kind of this movie is kind of a logical next progression. It's not great in comparison, but you get why at the time that somebody was like, hey, we should make this comic book into a movie.
Yeah.
But just for a little bit of broad context of who Swamp Thing is.
I want to know.
Okay, so he was created by a writer named Len Wein, or Wein, but I'm pretty sure it's Wein. It's Wein. And the artist is this guy, Bernie Wrightson. And if you look at some of that early art, man, it is, to me, it's really cool shit. Like, it's just fucking cool and weird and fucking trippy American Gothic, you fucking what is going on. So it's cool, but so history of Swamp Thing. All right. So let's see. It's very close to the movie in terms, but they did change a handful of things. So it is a guy named Alec Holland. That's all right, but it was his wife was Linda in actuality, and the Cable character was an FBI agent who was a dude, Matthew. And they become Matthew Cable and Swamp Thing become pals and whatever. So some of the cool stuff about Swamp Thing and the progression of how they initially conceived of him was pretty similar to the movie. You know, the serum, and in order for Swamp Thing to become Swamp Thing, he has to burn. Like the human aspect of it has to die in fire. And then they opened up all of this this sort of mythology around the fact that there's a thing called the oh shit, what is it called? Hang on a second. The Parliament of Trees. And the Parliament of Trees.
I love it already.
So the Parliament of Trees, I believe, was not introduced until after that first run. And it was one of the things that Alan Moore introduced. And so they took this idea. The original idea kind of is just a sort of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like it's a guy who turned into a monster and is trapped inside of that monster thing. When Alan Moore, and antics ensue, Frankenstein type thing and all of that. So after that first run, they hand it over to Alan Moore, and he just expands the mythology of it in these.
What's the Parliament of Trees, Tim? I want to know.
In this crazy way. So he basically makes this decision to say that Alec Holland, the original scientist who died, is not Swamp Thing. That Swamp Thing is the product of an elemental sort of pre-existing creature that has spanned the eternity, right?
I understand elemental, yeah.
Right.
The golem. Yeah.
And yes, and that the Parliament of Trees is sort of a group that kind of oversees the creation of those things and kind of says yay or nay to who has died in fire and then had the elemental sort of attributes imbued upon that creation. But so the new version of Swamp Thing is that, by Alan Moore, is that Swamp Thing is just an elemental creature. He is not Alec Holland. He just had absorbed Alec Holland's memories and sort of the things, because that was the body that he came from. So it's kind of like The Crow. When something really bad, like somebody's wronged really badly and they die because of it, the elemental aspect then says, okay, we need to right these wrongs. Yeah. And so they attach to that body. And so there's this whole run during the Alan Moore stuff where Swamp Thing has this major crisis because he's introduced to the Parliament of Trees and told that he's not actually Alec Holland. He's been thinking he was this whole time. And they're like, oh, no, you just have all of that human who is now dead's memories, and you're mistaken. You are this other creature. You're just Swamp Thing. And he has this major crisis of identity and all this shit, and comes through it. And then, off to the races with all sorts of cool shit. He meets people like John Constantine, who you've probably
Keanu
all
Reeves.
seen. Yeah, the Keanu Reeves movie with it, which I quite like. But it broadens up, like what Alan Moore did just opened up a whole new fucking thing. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Grant Morrison at one point got a hold of it. There was co-written by Mark Millar, who's done
I know a bit about Grant
shit.
Morrison.
Yeah, Grant's an interesting guy, right?
He's a magic with a K practitioner who summoned John Lennon and wrote a new John Lennon song, which I listened to and sounds like a new John Lennon song.
Holy shit, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's some cool shit. If you're interested, I would recommend. I think the one that I've heard recommended to me is.
You mean out of the Alan Moore ones? He wrote a few.
Yes, he was on it for a while.
Like, what's the original one? If I wanted to.
You would just. I think at this point you could just look up Volume 1.
Okay.
Right, that's the original run, and then you could obviously Volume 2 is the Alan Moore stuff. I do believe it got passed on during Volume 2 to some other writers and such. Yeah, Grant Morrison was in Volume 2. So, but there's some cool shit in there. Volume 3 is cool, blah, blah, blah. But there is this... so all of that stuff was not in the DC universe up until a certain point, and then they combined. I think they got bought by DC or whatever. I'm not sure about that. But they combined the universes at a certain point, and let's see. There's a run called Brightest Day. It's a big crossover event. That I've heard is pretty fucking cool.
Okay.
So that might be a good one to look into if you're into this shit.
So
anyway,
I'm not as into this. So this may be my limits on talking about just in comic book terms now. I said I was interested in hearing your comic book perspective, and I got it, though. So it was interesting.
But the last thing I'll say is two things. Almost every person who becomes a Swamp Thing has the initials A and H. There've been a bunch. Alec Holland, Albert Hollerer, Alan Hallman, Aaron Haley, Calbraith A.H. Rogers. That's a cheap one. They really punted on that. But yeah, he's a interesting character. Super, super powerful. Like one of the more powerful heroes in the universe, DC universe.
Well, he didn't seem to care much about those bullets.
Yeah.
And he can. Oh yeah, we didn't even mention his healing powers.
Yeah, he's a plant man.
Yeah, he's
a plant man.
And his arm grows back. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, cool shit.
That's
it. That's all I got.
So there was a whole filmschoolrejects.com. They have a series of like things we learned from the commentary track. So there was a 23 things we learned. I skimmed them all and just thought I'd pick the one that was most interesting. They was all pretty interesting, but the one that stood out to me, because I think it sort of pertained most to stuff we had already been talking about or were interested in. Okay. A quote pull from Film School Rejects, this article. So Wes Craven, he tried to keep Ray Wise in costume throughout the film so he could emote as Swamp Thing, but since he looked just so clearly different from Durdock, they ended up using none of the footage. So until that realization, Craven shot each scene featuring the Swamp Thing twice, one with each performer. So at a certain point up to the movie, he was still using Ray Wise, thinking it made a difference.
Whoa. That's where all the budget went.
Right. So like, I was thinking this whole time, like, oh, I wish Ray Wise was in it more. He possibly was, but we just wouldn't have any idea.
That is crazy.
And speaking of Durock, that's his name, Dick Durock, who played Swamp Thing as Swamp Thing. So,
but a bunch. He wasn't just him in the original.
That's what I was gonna say. I thought it was really interesting how he went on to play him. He's a continuity in the sequel, the 1989 sequel, and the TV series.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But he made another one of his other appearances, which was like, I thought a good. We're getting toward the end here. Fun thing. He was one of the county fair pie eating people in Stand By Me.
Oh, which one?
It says in this way that he was the champion. So I don't know if that was the reigning champion or if there was one that was like a clear winner. But watch it again, and I'm sure we'd recognize.
That's one of the grossest scenes of anything I've ever seen in my life.
And memorable and wonderful.
I disagree that it's wonderful.
Tell that to our bud Mikey Beatty. I know it's one of his favorite movies.
I love that movie. That scene, I can't.
You don't
watch
like vomit.
I hate vomit so much. I hate it so much. It's not even fun for me that it's so over the top and ridiculous. I just don't. I close my eyes.
It's one of.
I don't want to hear it.
It's so good.
No.
Okay, so do you have anything else? Because I have what I'd like to wrap up on things.
I don't.
So it's fun. I don't do this for everyone, but sometimes when reading about them, I'll stumble across the Roger Ebert review, and there's usually something fun in there.
I'm sure.
So a couple pulls from that I wanted to read because this, I had already, done my notes and decided, there's actually a lot in here I liked, but it seemed like Mr. Ebert, agreed with me. He said, so But after the thugs fill Swamp Thing with machine gun bullets and hack off his left arm, Alice asks, "Does it hurt?" And Swamp Thing replies, "Only when I laugh." That was the movie's moment of greatness. There are others that come close, as when Swamp Thing, dripping with moss and looking like a bug-eyed spinach souffle, says, "There is great beauty in the swamp, if you know where to look."
Yeah.
Which, like, Tim, you were immediately like, "Oh my God." And I was like, yeah, but I kind of like it. I don't know.
I mean, it's true and it's pleasant.
Yeah.
But in the context of that particular movie, in those
No,
moments...
but what other movie is about a swamp person that takes place entirely in a swamp?
Okay, fair point. I think when that line is surrounded by the schlocky bullshit that like fucking Frank Stallone fake Rambo is doing, and the like shitty misogyny, it's hard for me to put my brain in a place to appreciate that line.
But I guess again, it's like, when else are you gonna do it? And then something I really miss about Roger Ebert, where the way he had made a little piece out of each of his reviews. So with that set up, the last line in his review, with that context, I'll sort of use to sum up our discussion of Swamp Thing, is he said, "There's beauty in this movie if you know where to look for it."
Aww.
Swamp Thing.
Please put the music in right now.
Great.
Oh man, we did it, Swamp Thing. I guess he left.
Yeah, he was listening with his little ear hole to the door the whole time.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I hope he liked it.
Recommendations.
I watched Suspiria, the new Suspiria.
Oh yeah, I still haven't seen it. I'm kind of bummed I missed it in theaters in case I loved it.
Man, it is a movie.
I've heard such mixed things.
I'm actually mixed about I think I need to watch it again.
Well, we're on recommendations, so you brought it up because you're recommending it.
I am recommending it. I think it needs to be seen.
Okay.
But I actually think that you got to go watch the first one. I don't know. I think the right way to do it actually may be to watch the new one first and then go back. I think that's better. Because I watched the old one a few months ago, and I was kind of like, what the fuck am I even looking at? So I think it'd be better to do it the other way around. Mm-hmm. So watch both. New one first, old one next. It's fucked. I mean, there's some shit in that movie.
Okay. Cool.
It's cool, but
worth seeing.
Definitely worth seeing.
I'm just, again, I'm bummed I missed it in theaters, thinking, what if I did love it? I want to recommend nay a movie, nay a podcast, nay a show, nay a restaurant, which we have had one recommendation of, but an email list from one of our favorite, things we mention and source our horror movies from is Shudder. The subscription service is doing a lot for horror. But they have a mailing list called The Bite by Shudder.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool. And was when I was like, when we were starting this podcast and we were like, oh, do we want to like update with the news? I'm like, but I feel like there's other things that do that. This is it. Just go to subscribe to this, The Bite by Shudder. It's great because they have like a fun little sort of ongoing series, whatever it may be. Right now they're doing sort of a state by state in horror history, like talking about picking a state and what movies are shot there.
Cool.
Then they sort of do a short list of just sort of any of like the updates in horror movies, books, whatever's going on in the world of horror. And it's great. And I get everything I know from that, and it's like once a week or 2 weeks or whatever. It's not too overwhelming. It's just a little bite. It's one of the only kind of mailing list things I have right now I look forward to.
Sweet.
The Bite by Shudder.
The Bite.
All right.
Cool, man.
Next week's film.
All right, let's do it.
Wait, who's... Okay.
Did I pull this?
Now
Did
I
I
got-
pull? I think you pulled Swamp Thing.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Let's look at our... We gotta stay on this. So we know you... Wait. We had this last time. I pulled Maggie because I did the Arnold voice when I pulled it, which means you pulled Ghost Stories because you said I wanted to see it, which means I pulled Planet of the Vampires, which means you pulled Arnold, which means I pulled Swamp Thing, which means you pull
Yeah,
this
baby.
film.
Here we go. Whoa! I almost spilled the hat. Ooh. Well, I guess appropriate since I just recommended Suspiria. Opera, Dario Argento.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Great.
Cool.
Get back into the giallo fog. How do you say that?
I don't. I just don't. I don't even bother.
Giallo. That's what I say. Great. We'll get ready for some of that more dubbing you love so much.
My favorite.
We saw on Planet of the Vampires. You can find us at dismemberinghorror.com if you haven't already. My name's Ryan McDuffie. We should just remember to say our names at the beginning.
That's true.
I'm Ryan. You can see my portfolio site at ryanmcduffie.com. There's a link to it, and Tim and I have little bio sections on our website.
Yeah,
can get to us from that, and then
my name's Tim Haslin,
and we have some handles.
I got the Instagram is Dismembering Horror, Twitter is DisHorrorPod, and website is dismemberinghorror.com. And is there anything else we have? That's it.
Yeah, we have an email, which we need to...
Oh, yeah.
We need to connect our emails to that. It's been way too many episodes. We just assume no one's heard us.
Meanwhile, somebody's asking to give us a bunch of money.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll give you...
Even if we have a single recommendation, Dedshin, it's like...
I thought I had that, but I guess... Cool.
Did you listen, by the way, to our last week's episode? Because I was kind of trolling you / Easter egging you with the last...
I didn't finish it, so I got to finish it.
All right, well, never mind. Well, we're ending back to our normal outro music here. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Oh, see ya.